To Claire's point, we learned this week from internal whistleblower memos that many of these are being conducted, these raids, without a judge's warrant, but with an internal administrative warrant instead. Joining us now, Deputy Director for the ACLU Immigrants' Rights Project, Lee Gelernt. Lee, thanks for being with us. I want to talk about the important case you're arguing in New Orleans. But first, just on Minneapolis and the images we're seeing of a U.S. citizen being taken mistakenly from his home. What is the recourse? It may not happen today or tomorrow, but in perhaps the long term for many of these people who've been taken out of their homes and released because it turns out they weren't the violent criminals that ICE has suggested they were.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. Going forward, we have lawsuits. The state has lawsuits to try and stop it from going forward. The recourse for people who have been treated like this will hopefully be some sort of compensation. There may be damage actions brought. They can be difficult, but I think people ought to sue if this is what's happened to them. I mean, you've hit it right on the head. When Trump came in the second time, everyone said, well, now everyone has voted for more immigration enforcement. That's it. Your job is going to be impossible. And what I said then was you're going to see once little children start being pulled out of their house, once citizens are attacked, things are going to change because they won't stop at just the worst of the worst, as others are saying. They haven't. And now you see what's happening is that the winds of change. People realize, well, this is not just the worst of the worst, not even close. Everyone is being pulled out of their house. The doors are being barged down and people are being shot.
Hey, Lee, it's John Hammond here. Here's the question I have, which is, basically the administration tried to do this, what they are doing in Minneapolis. They tried to do it first in Chicago, right?
Right.
And there was a lot of pushback from Governor Pritzker and a bunch of his allies there. And basically, in the standoff between ICE and Chicago and Illinois won, ICE backed off, and then moved on to Minneapolis.
Right.
Without casting any blame at anybody in Minneapolis or Minnesota, what's the difference between those two cases? What did Governor Pritzker and the resistance, or to ICE at least in Illinois, what did they do that worked, or it seemed to work, to get the administration to back off that is not being done in Minnesota?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not actually sure what the political dynamic is here, whether the administration just thinks they're not going to back off of Minneapolis because they have the Somali issue there, or they can paint Minneapolis as more liberal. I don't think that the legal tactics were all that different. I think we're just going to see how Minneapolis plays out with these lawsuits. I don't know. And I think the big wild card is whether he's going to invoke the Insurrection Act and send the military there, which is obviously going to another legal fight. But that's a good question. And I'm not sure that there are that many different tactics. It may be just more the reaction of the administration. I don't know.
So we will see. It's been about a week since President Trump threatened the Insurrection Act. We will see if he follows through. Lee, let's now turn to the case you're working on. All 17 active status judges from the Fifth Circuit U.S. Court of Appeals heard arguments yesterday in the ACLU's lawsuit against President Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act to deport migrants. The administration argues only the president can determine what an invasion is, and therefore he has broad use of the law to remove people at will. So, Lee, you argued this case against the Trump administration. Just briefly remind viewers how they're using it to justify their tactics, and tell us what you argued.
Yeah, so this is really an extraordinary situation. I think if the administration gets away with this, basically anything goes. This is a law passed in 1798, which basically says when we're at war, we can make everybody from the other country, even if they're lawfully here, a quote unquote enemy alien, detain them, remove them, take their property. So it's only supposed to be used during war. And not surprisingly, we've only used it 3 times in our country's history: the War of 1812, World War I, and World War II, where we made everyone from those warring countries an enemy alien. The Trump but we're going to use it for the fourth time in the country's history. And you have to show that there's been either a declared war. Obviously, there's no declared war against Venezuela, or an invasion or incursion. We're going to say there's been an invasion or incursion by a drug gang, and they have some connection to the former head of Venezuela, Maduro, and therefore invoke this extraordinary power, again, for only the fourth time in our country's history. And even more, what they told the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals is whatever the president essentially declares as an invasion or incursion, even if it's just drug smuggling by a gang, the courts can't second guess that. And so if this is allowed, basically the president can declare an invasion or incursion whenever he wants. He's even saying that it's just not even drug smuggling, it's migration constitutes an invasion, unlocking these war powers. So we prevailed originally. The full court, the 17 judges, now heard it yesterday. We'll see what happens. But ultimately, the Supreme Court has said nobody can remove them to this extraordinary law until it comes back to the Supreme Court. So I suspect that's where it's headed fairly soon.
As you say, the argument is that the Venezuelan state backs this gang that's doing harm to the United States of America. But as I'm sure you've raised in court, there was a declassified CIA memo that said that was not the case, that it was not, in fact, the Maduro regime backing that gang. Fascinating. We'll keep close tabs on it. Deputy Director for the ACLU Immigrants' Rights Project, Lee Gelernt. Lee, thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it.